Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fearless and Free TV. In today's episode of Wonder Women Wednesdays, I'm really excited to bring on our guest today, Jennifer Kauffman. She is a survivor of the Boston bombing a few years ago, and she's going to be talking about raising her consciousness and fearlessness and freedom and all those things that I love to talk about. Before I bring her on, and if you're new to me, I am the physical embodiment of Victoria, Elohim of Freedom. And I am here on planet Earth to help liberate humanity from the present fear-based reality so that we can all rise up into a new reality based entirely in love. You can learn more about me at victoriareynolds.com. I'm the author of 4 books, all intended to help you rise above your fear-based beliefs and into a life you love. And today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my spiritual protection program. I haven't promoted that in a while. I just got the insight this morning that a bunch of you might be needing it. This is all about how to protect your energy from the dark and nefarious entities and energies that are floating around out there. So it's called your spiritual protection. I don't remember the name of the product. That's pretty funny. But you can find it on my website at victoriareynolds.com. Click on shop. And if you scroll down, you'll see my meditations and invocations down there. And it's the invocation for creation and protection. If you listen to that, it will give you an example of what your morning meditation and protection can look like. And you can learn how to do this for yourself. And so now it's time to bring in my beautiful and lovely guest this afternoon. Hi, Jennifer. It's so nice to meet you.
Hi, Victoria. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah. So, Jennifer, as we talked about just before you got on the show, you were having a bit of a storm in your neighborhood. So for all of you watching, if she's a little fuzzy and a little glitchy, it's because of the storm. She herself is not fuzzy or glitchy.
No, not today anyway.
So tell me a little bit about who you are and what you're doing in the world. And then we'll get to how you got there.
Okay, great. So right now I'm immersed in bringing film and products such as books to help evolve human consciousness, and so that we can rise up into 5th dimension reality and really remind ourselves that we have the God-given ability to thrive in life, no matter what is going on in the outside world. So I just finished producing a documentary about my own story, sharing my insights and wisdom and how I rose up from terrorism. And it is called There's Got to Be More to Life. And soon we're going to be starting the second film in the series called There Is More to Life. And we really showcase, I'm all about talking about these days trauma as a gift. And that is a new perspective for me that I actually learned through my experience at the Boston bombings, where I was 15 feet from the first of 2 explosions. And so through my journey of rising and through my journey of healing, I started to become aware that these experiences that happen in life are really meant for us to help us rise up to our best selves. And so that we're living our best life and we're living on purpose. I never used to believe that until recently. I used to think that there must be something wrong with me because I've had several traumatic experiences starting when I was a little girl. And my awareness shifted. And so now I'm all about sharing that insight and wisdom so others can find the light within themselves too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I call that turning your pain stories into your power stories.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, in my journey, I had to come to terms with there was a terrorist that was living inside of me. And so here I, have this experience at the Boston Marathon bombings of terrorism. And in my journey, I had to heal the terrorist that lived inside of me. Mm-hmm. And otherwise, if I had acted on my rage and hatred towards those 2 young men that placed the bombs that day, that killed 4 people and injured 264 others, not to mention the ripple effect it had out in the world. And I had to learn, to forgive the unforgivable, which was not easy to do at the time. But once I did that, something pivotal changed. I had this overwhelming experience of peace, which I didn't anticipate, candidly. And from that, I was able to access compassion for those two young men. And eventually, over time, I got to a place where I actually had love for them. And I now view them as my two soul brothers who have helped me get me on my spiritual path and my journey. And my life is more fulfilled now than it's ever been. I experience bliss on a regular basis. And life has been like this magic carpet ride, even during the midst of COVID.
Oh, I've lost you completely. So until you get back, I'm going to talk for a second. Oh, you're back. No, what I was going to say is that healing that inner terrorist that was inside of you, that's an example for people who have been asking me about this. That's a perfect example of shadow processing, doing your shadow work. So people ask me all the time, well, what does doing shadow work look like? Your story of dealing with your own inner terrorist and learning how to have love and compassion for those bombers is a perfect example of what shadow work looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, I had to learn to love myself, right? I had to learn to love and nurture myself and no longer beat myself up for the mistakes in my life or for the experiences in my life that were less than pleasant. And once I started to shift my perspective, it started with an inquiry, right? It actually started with, okay, why is this happening to me? Which is classic, what I've come to understand now is classic victim mentality, right? Which is common. Everybody experiences that on some level. And I realized that question didn't leave me feeling empowered or inspired, frankly. And so over time, I just started to get curious and like, well, what if this were happening for my highest good? And it started with my meditation teacher. My meditation teacher, about 6 months after the bombings happened, said to me, one day you're going to see this as the greatest gift of your life. And I'm like, greatest gift of my life? Are you crazy? My life was shattered. My life was turned upside down. Everything as I knew it fell apart. A gift? And yet I had such respect for this woman who I had been, she had been a teacher of mine for many years. And so when I left the meditation hall that night, even though I was upset, she'd planted a seed. And then that seed cultivated over time and got me to this place. What if this were a gift? What if this were happening for me rather than to me? And then all of a sudden, something shifted inside of me. And I talk about it in my book that I did with Jack Canfield. And it's about going on a treasure hunt and looking for the good in situations that perceive horrific or bad or, the mind will tell us that. And I had to go on this treasure hunt to find the good in that situation. And once I started down that path, in the beginning, I couldn't find any good. All that came to the surface was all the crap that had, all the stuff that I had felt, shame and bad and all of that stuff. And all of that had to come to the surface to be released in order for me to be able to see on the other side of that complete strangers came, prayed for us. Complete strangers wrote handwritten notes to us, expressing their heartfelt, love and compassion and wanting to let us know that they were praying for our well-being. I saw a different side of humanity.
Yeah.
And that's what's possible. That is what's possible when we do our own inner work, when we do our own shadow work. And, that experience left me terrified. You talk about fearless, that experience, I was a very outgoing social person before that happened. But when that happened, I was terrified. I was terrified of my own shadow, for crying out loud. And I would silently contemplate, oh my gosh, I thought that in order to find safety again and to feel safe, that I would have to harm those two men or hope that they would, be caught. Because in the beginning they weren't caught. And so, I went down this path that was very destructive. and certainly not very empowering. And that's when I had to really go within and find that inner strength and find that love and compassion and find a way to rise up from that terror and that fear. It wasn't an easy journey in the beginning, but every little step forward, and that's what I hope that your listeners can walk away from. Just make a choice. Just make a choice to go down that path and follow. To me, Spirit led me down a path, and I just kept getting breadcrumbs, and I just kept following those breadcrumbs, those seeds. I didn't know ultimately where it was going to head or where it was going to go. And that's where I had to lean in on my faith and trust that I was actually being led to something greater. And that's where I am today, is that taking that situation and now sharing the insights and wisdom that I learned from that so other people can actually learn from it and accelerate their own healing. Right. And if I can help someone shave off years of their own healing and recognize that they have the power, every single person here has the power to rise and thrive.
So here's what I've noticed over the years, and your story is a perfect example of it. I call it a holy shift story. And it is typically it's a midlife transition. It's a transformational story. So we'll be going through life, going our direction, and we get hit by something that drops us to our knees. That's why I call it a holy shift. It doesn't necessarily make us, turn us into a born-again Christian or something like that. Although some people it does. What it does is that it puts us on our spiritual path. It takes us, it's an event that is so big in our life. It takes us off the old path we were on and puts us on our spiritual path. And sometimes it is something so big like that it sucks the life out of us and transforms us into who we're really here to be. So it's like that moment that takes us from being the caterpillar and throws us into this cocoon, and then we emerge on the other side as the butterfly. And so, but when we're in that really, really painful experience, it doesn't feel like it's ever going to end. And it's that what you were saying before is, why is this happening to me? Why did this happen to me? And so all people can see in the beginning is how horrible it is, and then start to realize, oh, this is happening for me. And it takes a while to get there. And then once you're able to do the work, the shadow work, the life processing is a term that I use for it rather than shadow work. We start to process our lives, because those events tend to bring all this stuff to the surface that we experienced when we were younger, so that we have to look at it and resolve it. So that holy shift experience you had in the Boston Marathon brought up all the crap from your childhood that also needed you to take a look at it.
Absolutely.
So that's how we start to be grateful for this experience that we're in. I mean, the collective of humanity is in it right now. That's what COVID and all this hoopla is it's one of those holy shift experiences for the entire planet.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't see that yet. All I can see is how this horrible time that we're all in, not recognizing this is actually for us.
Absolutely, it's for us. I mean, look at what happened in the early stages of COVID when people were in lockdown, and even though the lockdown was challenging for all of us, right, myself included, but look at the good that came from it, right? The birds started to come out, more. Pollution, if you look at, pollution started to, get better. And so it's as if we go through these experiences to slow us down and to do a reset. Right. And it's not bad. It's not wrong. It's part of life. And when we can learn to embrace it and learn to go with the flow, easier said than done sometimes, but when we can learn to go with it, it doesn't have a grip on us anymore. And actually, you're like, okay, the sun always rises at some point, right? So that in the darkness, there is light. Without contrast, we wouldn't know expansion.
That's right.
And this is actually giving us all the irony here is that COVID brought us back home, literally to our physical homes, got us to slow down, what I observed in my own family, my sister and my brother-in-law actually both had very successful jobs. They have 2 kids and they're very active. What COVID did is brought them all back home, and they got to sit around the table and have dinner together again on a more consistent basis. They were able to connect with one another because they weren't running around going from point A to point B. And so it gave us an opportunity to not only connect with those that we love in our household, it gave us an opportunity to go within.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the very clear message I got at the beginning of COVID was that. So I knew a couple of weeks before the lockdown that the lockdown was coming. I just knew that was happening. And the message I kept getting was, go inside and know that I am. And it was asking people to go inside, take a huge giant pause button. That's what I was saying, was like this giant pause button, right? To just go inside and just be. And human beings haven't done that in forever. Just go inside and stop. Mm-hmm. And as you said, it reconnected a lot of relationships, and there were also a lot of relationships that ended as a result. But what it did is it reminded people what was really important to them. A whole bunch of people had spiritual awakenings during the lockdown time. That was like the biggest, the broadest part of the Great Awakening happened during lockdown. And it didn't do much for me because I work from home anyway. I've been working from home for like 30 years. So it wasn't any different for me. But I would go on my walks and it was like pure bliss outside. Mm-hmm. It would be me and the squirrels and the flowers and the birds and nobody else. It was beautiful. And it was like, oh, this is what heaven on earth is. Oh, just lovely.
That was my experience too. I felt a different vibration. I felt this like aliveness. I felt like the animals came out more and they were more vibrant, more alive. And it was like, and like the chaotic energy that was before that started to dissipate. And I experienced bliss like you did too. And I experienced a lot of harmony. I know others didn't, and I know even within my own family, there are people that are still terrified of COVID. But when you can learn to embrace it, there's nothing to fear.
Yeah, I wasn't afraid of it the entire time. My family's terrified of it. My husband and my kids, as I call him. But I've never been afraid of it.
Me neither.
Yeah.
And that's what's possible because I think there's an awakening within ourselves that just has a knowing that these types of things happen. And there's really nothing to be afraid of. And as somebody, I want your listeners to understand, I lived with fear and anxiety and panic disorder for most of my life. So for me, go through a situation like this and not feel fear at all is an absolute miracle and a testament to all of the inner work I did to integrate the shadow side of me, not to run from it, not to hide from it like I used to. I used to try to outrun it. And the irony is that I had to be at a marathon to have a bomb go off to get me to stop running from myself and start running from the dark parts of myself and actually learn to embrace them and love them and recognize that, oh my gosh, if I didn't have this experience, I wouldn't be the woman I am today.
Yeah, that's a really, really, really interesting dichotomy there, isn't it? Mm-hmm. You were running and running and running and running until you finally got stopped.
Yeah. And I feel like life is a metaphor. I feel like life is a metaphor, and that, when we like, oh my gosh, notice, I had this experience. And the irony is I'd been running for myself, and this experience at the marathon literally brought me back home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I refer to that. It brought you back home to who you really are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what this COVID experience is all about. It's bringing people back home to who they really are. Mm. And these holy shift experiences, transformational experiences, they're really painful until we start to understand what they are. And then start processing everything that comes up as a result of them. The processing part people want to run away from.
Yeah.
Because that part's the most painful part. It's all of the stuff from our entire life starts bubbling up to the surface, and we have to deal with it.
Well, like anything, like we are energy beings, right? And so when this stuff comes up, and I refer to this as that this stuff comes up, think of it like vomit. And I don't mean to sound gross, but I do mean to sound gross. Right. Would you ever swallow your vomit? No, it's coming up to be released. And if you can just allow yourself to be with it, even though it's painful, even though it may be scary, even though it may be daunting, if you can just allow that wave of energy to come up and out of you, what's on the other side of that is like bliss and peace and like unconditional love. When you give yourself permission to go there. But it is scary, right? It is a process, but energy is a waveform. And when that's coming up, it just means that you're ready to let it go. So don't stuff it. Don't try to numb it. Don't try to run from it. Like, just see it as a blessing, because it means that you're evolving in your own human consciousness, and you're purging stuff within yourself that's no longer working. And I think that's it too. Is like, you talk about this is having, to me, the opposite of fear is courage, right? Is that, having the courage to face yourself, having the courage to face the pain. It's just not an easy thing to do. You've experienced it yourself, right? But when you take the time and you are courageous with yourself and with others, you start to look at life and you go, okay, if this were my last day, how would I want to spend it? Would I be doing the things that I'm doing? Would I be around the people that I'm currently around? Or would I make a shift? And no disrespect to the people or to anything else, but there's something that's calling you forth. And are you listening? Are you taking the steps? Are you being courageous? Because what the illusion is that for me, in my experience, when I am taking a step outside of my comfort zone, and I'm taking that leap forward to expand and grow, for me, I'm met with fear right away. And I have a choice in that moment. Do I let the fear stop me? Or do I allow myself to rise above and propel through it? Not try to run from it, not try to hide from it, but go, oh, be a witness to, right, I'm afraid, I've never done this before.
Right.
So now I say to myself, listen, I'm actually going through another phase of my own growth, and I am dealing with fear, actually. And I sit there and I have to take a step back and pause and go, right, that fear that I'm feeling, which feels real, is also the very thing. It's like, right, I'm growing again. And I can shift my perspective, like, right, I'm taking that next leap that I feel drawn to do. And when I just embrace that and love myself through it, the fear starts to dissolve in my experience.
Yeah. Well, part of it is acknowledging it right? So for me, it's, why am I feeling so hesitant about this, whatever this new thing is? And then when I stop and actually ask why I'm hesitating, then the response is, oh, right, just what you were saying. I'm afraid because it's something I haven't done before, and I'm stepping into something new. And to be completely compassionate with ourselves. And then once we make that acknowledgement, oh, okay, got it, then you can make the decision to do it. It's not as scary anymore once we acknowledge that it's actually just fear. And fear is just an illusion.
Yeah. I in my training, when I became a result coach, they say, fear is basically false expectations appearing real. I actually have another one, which is face everything and rise.
Oh, that's so funny. I use that all the time too.
And it's so empowering. Like, face everything that you're met with. If the pain is coming up, face it. If the fear is coming up, face it. Because when you do, and you give yourself permission to do that, it is magic on the other side. It is just such a, like, it's what keeps me going, frankly. Because when I experience those moments of bliss and peace and just like ecstasy, really, right? It's like, oh my gosh, it just keeps me in the game. And then I recognize that the contrast and the fear that I'm feeling is sharpening my tool. It's just literally helping mold the next iteration of myself. Mm-hmm. It's raising myself up. It's helping me lighten the load, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's possible for everyone.
Absolutely. So when you're talking about the processing, the shadow processing, all that is the 4D. And I talk about that a lot because people want to go straight from 3D to 5D and don't understand that there's this whole part that's in the middle. That's actually where the magic happens.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's
bypass your way to 5D.
Yeah, no, I tried that way. It didn't work. It didn't work. But it's like the cocoon that you talked about, right? 4D is like the cocoon.
Exactly.
And for those people that have given birth, right, there's a gestation period. And when you allow yourself to go through all that processing, if you will, what's on the other side is just heaven on earth.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's powerful.
And people try to rush that process, and it's also not something you can rush. So one of the things I've discovered is that you'll go through and process all this stuff, and then something will come up, and you'll go, "Oh man, I thought I was done with that." But it'll come up again at a whole nother level because we have the tools and the resources to be able to navigate it at a whole nother level, so that it doesn't suck us back down into desperation and despair and all of that. It's this we're able to look at it and go, oh, look at that, that's still there. But then you know how to deal with it and resolve it. The other thing I wanted to share, and I know you would agree with this, is that what people call the Ascension Flu. There was not when I had my Ascension experience, which was after the 2008 recession, that was my holy shift. That when you're in that cocoon, sometimes it involves getting what feels like a flu or being really sick. Mm-hmm. That's since been termed the Ascension Flu. Mm-hmm. At the time, when it happened to me, there wasn't a name for it. There wasn't a label for it, but I knew that's what it was. So I was sick for about 3 weeks, coughing and coughing and coughing and coughing. And what I knew is that I was coughing up old beliefs. Mm-hmm. And so what you were saying about the throwing up, right? It's that same kind of thing. If someone has had their holy shift experience and they start getting what feels really sick, it probably is that, as they're purging everything that no longer serves them. And sometimes it's not pretty. Let's put it that way, because the body's going to purge it however it purges it. And then the other thing too is allow yourself to cry. There's so many people who's like you were saying, they stuff it, right? And one of the things I discovered when I was going through my process was there were some times I cried like a 2-year-old on my bedroom floor. Mm-hmm. And just allow yourself to cry it all out. Mm-hmm. And then the euphoria that comes afterwards, that just the peace that comes after you cry it out is really extraordinary. And so many people have this whole belief of, oh, I can't cry. I had that. That was one of my things, is when I allowed myself to cry. But it was just would stuff it in, and I finally decided it actually was okay to cry, and it's really, really good for letting out the grief.
Yeah, it's so powerful. We're conditioned on so many levels to not allow ourselves to express the God-given emotions that we have. whether it's sadness, whether it's upset,
Mm-hmm.
right? Anger is merely a healthy boundary has been broken, right? And then there's this thing, we don't have to, exploit our rage and anger towards someone else, right? But recognize that something, there's something that is out of alignment. And again, when you can go within and say, okay, what's really going on inside of me? Because what's happening is that life presents us with what we're putting out. And I remember in my younger years, this whole fake it till you make it type of thing. And I struggled with this, candidly, right? Because there's a level of that where for me, it was like inauthentic. I'm like, if I'm sad, I need to experience the sadness. Do I need to dwell in it? Do I need to drown in it? No. But like anything else, when I can just not stuff it and put it aside, then I can't control when it comes up. And I think that's the other thing too, being a recovering control freak. And I think that happens from when you've had trauma as a child, especially, is that you want to control your situation because you feel like if you can control it, there's safety in that. That also is an illusion. I've come to understand it took me nearly 40 years to figure that out, but that is it. And so when we can just allow ourselves and recognize safety comes from within ourselves. And, our experiences that are happening in life are a direct reflection of what we're vibrating out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a lot of, Eileen McCusick talks about this in her new book, The Electric Body. We are electric beings, and we actually have a vibration to us. We don't hear it, we don't hear it, but we're vibrating at all times. And, and our thoughts contribute to what we're vibrating, both internally and externally. So if you're not feeling good, it's a direct reflection of what's going on inside. The great news is, kind of like a radio station, if a song comes on that you don't like, you have the power to change the dial. Mm-hmm. And then when you change the dial, you can experience a new song. We have that power within us. But so many people are not taught that. Like, oh, right, I don't feel good right now. And it's, we tend to label it as something's happening outside of us because that is how we become aware. But the truth is that's coming to us because of what we're putting out. So if we don't like what life is presenting us, we are a direct reflection of what we're, it's just a mirror. Right. But the beauty of that is, please don't be scared by it. Actually see that it's empowering because it's like anything else. It's like giving you a sign that you're off course. And you have the power to get yourself back on course.
Right. Just like little sign.
Yes.
Yeah. And when they crazy, pay attention to them, they get bigger and louder.
Yeah.
And
guess what?
Yeah.
Life actually becomes more fun because it's kind of like, for me, I like to play, right? I'm like a big kid at heart. I love to play. And it's like a game. I'm like, oh, what's universe going to, present to me today? What's spirit going to present to me today? And sometimes I don't get signs, or so I think, because that's time for me to pause. Mm-hmm. I tend to be a go type of person because I just, it's even as a little kid, I struggled to sit still. I'm much better at it now, but even there, sometimes I'm like, I still want to, and it's like, no, just pause. Allow time for things to integrate and ruminate. Mm-hmm. And germinate, really, right? Like a seed doesn't pop up and bloom overnight. It takes time.
Right. Absolutely. And that's the feminine part of creation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of people, because they're just in this spiritual awakening process, are starting to understand this masculine feminine balance, and the doing, going is masculine, and the sitting and being and allowing things to just germinate and grow is the feminine. So it's about learning how to balance both of that out, those two aspects within ourselves, and be perfectly loving and compassionate with ourselves, regardless of which phase we're in.
Yeah. Yeah. Love's the way. love is the way, and I never, sitting here with you today, honestly, if you had said, 8.5 years ago, I'd go through an experience that would completely shatter my world and turn my world upside down. And then I'd come on the other side of that, basically having more love and compassion, not only for the two young men that did that, but for humanity.
Mm-hmm.
I would have said, you're absolutely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so grateful. There were twice in my journey where I was very close to taking my own life. Because when I was in that cocoon phase, for me, what I didn't understand at the time, but I think would be very important for your followers, is that what I didn't know is that experience literally broke me open, right? It blew me open.
Mm-hmm.
And it shattered the facade and shattered all that, which left me feeling super vulnerable and frankly terrified that other people might hurt me and harm me. And I had to work through that. But what I also had to work through was that that is how all of the stuff that was coming up, which felt so daunting, so overwhelming, and I felt so out of control. And I was trying to stifle it at the time because I didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that on average, it takes about 90 seconds to process emotions. So if we can just allow ourselves to be with it, it actually can shift pretty quickly. I did not know that until many years later. And so I frankly made my journey more challenging because I didn't know what I now know today. And so I didn't know that all of that stuff was coming up for my good, that it was cleansing me and allowing me to bring in more light, to bring in more vibration so that I could rise up, like the phoenix rising from the ashes, right? I didn't know that was actually really for my highest good. I actually thought I was being punished. I thought all of these bad things that had happened in my past were just magnified. And because I felt so overwhelmed and so out of control, and I just wanted it to stop.
Right.
So twice I wanted to take my life. But fortunately, my two little nieces who were 6 and 8 at the time, that I contemplated that, and I was very close within seconds of taking my own life.
Yeah.
Those two little girls came to my mind. And I thought, when I'm reunited with them, what would I say to them? I didn't have any words.
Right.
Other than I chickened out. And so those two little girls saved my life, truthfully. And I'm so grateful that they did.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that our angels show up in strange ways, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do. And, and I think that's it. And, our angels actually can be disguised as people like those two young men that placed the bombs, actually. And that took me many years to get to that point. But the truth is, without that experience, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing in the world today.
That's right.
And that's the opportunity if we step into it. Now, let's be clear. I don't wish anyone that experience. And I believe now that if I had listened more to spirit and slowed down more, I wonder if I would have had to go through that experience. I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time there. But my point is this, is that when we can quiet our mind and get in alignment, true alignment with our being, we are divinely guided, and life does not have to be a struggle. We don't have to be in survival mode. If we pay attention to the signs, and they're all around us, and pay attention to the synchronicities, which are right there in front of us, life literally can become really magical and playful. Kind of like kid-like, actually. I'm like, life for me now is in a lot of ways feels like a child at play. I don't know which each day is going to unfold. Yes, I have got a calendar. Yes, I've got a schedule, but I'm able to connect and meet with amazing people like yourself. I just met you today, but I feel so connected to you, and I feel because we are on a similar journey of helping share our own experiences and our own, stories so that other people can, be inspired and recognize that they can have this too. They can rise up from those experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you say that, because there is that ability to get up in the morning and ask ourselves, ooh, what synchronicities are going to come into my path today? Instead of waking up and saying, oh, what work do I have to do today? It's a completely reverse way of looking at our daily experience.
Yeah. And you never know who you're going to encounter, right? Like, you could go out and go get a coffee and you could meet someone that literally could change your life in an instant, just in a mere smile or a brief conversation. Like, that's what's possible. I grew up, being told don't talk to strangers, and I understand it, right? But I have a different approach now. Like, I love talking to strangers because it gives me an ability to connect with people. Because at the end of the day, we're all one. We're human beings with a soul. We just have different hair color, different skin color, and different personalities. But at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want love. We all want to feel accepted and belong, even though we have differences. And our differences, that is also a blessing, right? That is what makes us unique, and we each have a song to play. Your song is your song, my song is my song. And every day we have an opportunity to play our music.
Well, and what's so great about that is my song is my song and your song is your song. Together they make a great harmony.
Absolutely.
And so people get all caught up in this is mine and me, not understanding that each one of us has our tune, right? And the more of us who bring our tune together, the more beautiful this song is that we're creating.
Yeah. And actually, it's together we rise. Together we rise. And, you're actually helping me remember something in my journey. I did a whole host of modalities in my spiritual ascension from the bombings, but one of which was drumming. Now, I remember a dear friend of mine said, let's go drumming. I'm thinking to myself, I don't know how to do that. She's like, you don't need to know how. And I said, so I'm going to go in a room with a bunch of strangers that I don't know except for you. And I'm going to play the drums and we're going to basically jam and play together. Isn't that awful? Like, I don't have any experience with this. She's like, no. It's like this magical experience. And I went kind of like, really? But I trusted her. And when we got there and I got the drum, in the first couple of minutes is like this is chaotic kind of rhythm and rhyme, but then something magical happens. And there's this cadence that happens. And then all of a sudden, people are drumming their own tune, but then you pick up the vibration of others and you create this beautiful music. It was so inspiring and so healing. I had no idea that was possible. And the truth is, we don't need drumming to do that. Just in this conversation, right? We can create those kind of experiences because we are just being who we are authentically meant to be in this moment, expressing whatever is coming to be expressed. There's no script, there's no agenda, it's just connection. And whatever wants to be spoken, we give ourselves that ability to express it in this now moment.
Yep. That's what I love about this show. I love hosting this show for that reason. I get to meet the most amazing people and have the most amazing conversations. And then I'll get off the show and go, oh man, that was the best conversation I've ever had. I think I say that every time. Because I get to, we have this amazing energy exchange that happens.
Yeah.
That my heart expands and your heart expands and all the people watching, their hearts expand. And it's this such a beautiful experience. And we know the more that we send that out across the airwaves, I started saying a year ago, we need to love hack the airwaves.
Yes.
This is what I do on this show. I love hack the airwaves. And we send it out there, out into the airwaves, out across the planet. And I know for people who don't understand this, every word we speak affects the collective consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And which is why I love this show. And I love bringing on guests like you, because we are changing the entire human collective mind, the collective mind, by these conversations that we have, just by having these conversations, because it's going out there and it's spreading across the airwaves all across the planet. Now, I don't know who's watching, who might watch it down the road, who's watching it now. The important thing is that they can feel that resonance from our hearts.
Yeah.
And it changes people even if they don't even know it. And that's okay too.
Absolutely. And I don't know, like I can see the fuzziness of my camera because of the storm that's happening. What's fascinating to me is that as the conversation with you has gone on, that fuzziness has gone, the vibration of it has gotten stronger and more powerful. And I feel it's showing how I feel vibrationally in my body. As the conversation continues to unfold, I feel more expanded. I feel more alive. And that's the beauty of, being in the now moment with like-minded people, like-hearted people, mm-hmm. who want to express that even in our darkest days, and we all experience that. We're not unique in that way. Our experiences are maybe different, mm-hmm. but the process is the same.
Yep. Absolutely.
We've all had trauma. And now I believe COVID is giving us an opportunity in the here and now moment to heal those past traumas and to give us the ability to rise up. And when more of us in the collective do that, we will make an evolutionary and planetary shift doing that. Mm-hmm. And so it just takes enough of us to continue to get out there and speak our truth and create this whole nother, love sauce is like what comes to mind. Like just pouring love towards one another.
I love that. I've never heard that term before. Love sauce.
It just came out. I've never spoken before. It just came out. I was like, that's actually pretty cool.
I'm seeing like this pot of stew, right? We're storing up the love sauce. It's like pizza sauce.
Yeah, like let's just love on each other more.
Yeah.
It's easy for me. My old conditioning. It's easy to look for what's wrong, right? But when you condition yourself to look for what's good, and you can't help but to pour out love.
Yeah. And there's so much good out there. We've been living in what I call a fear-based reality. So in that 3D fear-based reality, the first response is to look at what's wrong. Mm-hmm. Because that's the way we've been conditioned to see everything through the eyes of fear. But once we're able to flip the script and start looking at everything through the eyes of love, there is so much good in the world and so much to be grateful for and so many amazing things that are happening. We just have to open up our eyes and our hearts to be able to recognize it and embrace it and let it fill us up. There is amazing things in the world and so many extraordinary extraordinary human beings.
Yeah, and I think this is also like, we call it the Great Awakening. It's also like the Great Reset, right? Is that, to me, there's an opportunity here and now to pivot for those that, who have been struggling or in a profession or a job that they're not really fulfilled in. If they're in a relationship that they're not fulfilled in, there's an opportunity to take a step back and like, what is it that you want to create? Because we are the creators of our reality.
Right.
I heard that for years, but I never quite understood what that meant.
Right.
Especially after the bombings. I created the bombings? What, are you crazy? I would never do that. And yet, I can't quite articulate it, but we do create our realities in every moment of every day. Listen, I can't control what happens outside of my own existence, right? But I can choose how I respond. And I think that's the key here, is that we can respond with more fear. That's an option.
Mm-hmm.
In my experience in my past, is a very dark, scary, lonely place. And if that's the path you want to choose, then that's the path. But when you can learn to embrace it and look for, the good, and give yourself the permission to step into that's calling you forth.
Yeah.
You'll experience fulfillment and joy, for me, like I never have before.
Yeah, it took me a while to figure that out too. Was the one that you are the creator of your own reality, and the one that took me a while to grasp, and I finally got about 10 years ago, was that your happiness isn't in your circumstances. I had the hardest time grasping that until I had my transition, my transformation experience, and in what should have been my whole entire world falling apart, like you, I discovered bliss. I finally realized, happiness really doesn't have anything to do with the circumstances. It has everything to do with our perception of the circumstances.
Absolutely.
And our suffering is in our perceptions. Our suffering is in our attachments to how we think things should have been or need to be. And it's as soon as we let go of our attachments to how we think things should be. I always say, don't should on yourself and don't should on other people. By all means, don't should on yourself. But when we let go of our attachments to how things should have been or should be, then the suffering goes with that. It just dissipates because we've completely shifted our perspective out of our attachments and into. Now, for me, gratitude is one of the most powerful tools in my toolbox. Gratitude and forgiveness, and when we shift our perspective about our circumstances, that all the suffering attachments that go to it they just dissipate. They just disappear. It's the nothingness that they always were.
And in the nothingness, anything can be created.
Yeah.
It's like a blank canvas.
Yeah.
And when we do our shadow work and we release that stuff and we're left with nothing, we literally are the blank canvas that can create anything.
Yep.
I want to share something for your listeners just to showcase what's possible. So I directed my very first film, that There's Got to Be More to Life, and never had done it before. I had produced films prior, but I had never directed a film before and brought it to life, everything around it. And I was told to expect it to be about 18 to 24 months to create a documentary. But intuitively, I knew that we could do it in less time. And I just intuitively knew that we could do it in like 6 or 7 months. But every time I would speak that to my team and to the people around me, they'd be like, that's not possible. And rather than, go to toe-to-toe with them or to, I would just listen. And I would get their reality. And these are people that have been in the field for 20, 30 years, very prominent folks in the film industry. And and Emmy award-winning people, right? And they're like, that's not possible. I said, I hear you. And, just stay focused on what you do amazing. I'll worry about the schedule. And of course, we've had some twists and turns and some ups and downs. It was not a straight path, and life isn't.
Right.
And I had to surrender in ways in which I didn't even know I had to learn how to do. But what happened was we did produce the film in 6 months.
Oh.
And we did something that has never been done before. And so I say that because when we tap into our own inner genius, you talk about Wonder Woman, right? We all have a Wonder Woman or Wonder Man, right? Because men have this too. Ability, we are all our own superheroes if we allow ourselves to be that.
Yep.
And when we can follow that inner guidance, but let me tell you, the noise on the outside was, we can't do that. And rather than say, yes, we can, and go toe to toe, I was like, no, okay, I hear you. And we're going to just keep creating.
Right.
And we're going to see what happens. And through that letting go and surrendering and listening and validating one another, something magical happened. And I'm not going to lie, I had some doubt along the way that we could do this, but Spirit didn't.
Right.
When we allow ourselves to tap into that higher level of consciousness, life actually isn't a struggle anymore.
Right.
We create a struggle. We create a suffering.
Yeah, and it's through our resistance. So you went into that with no resistance.
Well, and then I had some resistance along the way. I want to be candid about that, right? It's like I wasn't completely resistant free. And but every time I was like, I became aware, I'm like, oh right, I'm resisting again. Oh right. I'm wanting now, because I had the awareness that we could do it in that time, there was a stage in the process that I got attached to it. And I had to learn to let go of that attachment and go, okay, I'm just going to surrender and just like, okay, it's going to happen or it's not. But I can choose to be happy. I can choose to be free in this moment, or I can choose to go into fear. I can choose to struggle. I can choose to suffer. And let's be clear, I played on all of the spectrums there. But I don't know about you, but I think happiness and joy is just a better, it's like, okay, I don't know how we're going to pull this off.
It's a better choice.
It's a better choice. It's like when we can be curious, like a kid. Like, I don't know, how are we going to play? How are we going to play in the sandbox today? I don't know. But when we can come from that curious place, oh my God, it lightens the load.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, wow, I can't believe, Jennifer, we've been on here for an hour already.
Wow.
You and I could talk for days.
We totally could.
I have a feeling we will.
It's been such a pleasure being with you.
It has. Oh my gosh, it's been so amazing getting to know you. So I'm going to, where would you like people to connect with you? I have a banner.
You have a banner. So we did something really special for you and for your listeners, right? So we have this movie called There's Got to Be More to Life. And it is actually a movie that you'll gain a lot of insight and wisdom and inspiration. It is meant to bring you back home. And it's meant to have you go through your own healing experience and really cultivate what matters to you. But we've created something where we're gifting your listeners with a sync up meditation. It's about 11-minute meditation. It's a guided meditation on receiving. I think all of us want to be able to receive more love, more abundance, more whatever in our lives. So we're gifting your viewers this opportunity if they act now. So when you purchase the film, you can go into the site there. You can also find it through There's Got to Be More to Life. Put in Victoria Reynolds in the coupon code, and you'll be gifted with that guided meditation. And we threw in some extra bonuses too, because we just want to help people rise and thrive in life.
I love that. Thank you so much. No, I didn't know this until 5 seconds ago. I promise all of you. This was a surprise. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for that. That is really, really beautiful. I gratefully receive that, and I gratefully receive it on behalf of all the viewers here too, as well.
Thank you.
You know, yeah. So it is time to say goodbye. Until next time, I might have you on here again, but I have a feeling we're going to be working on some things together outside of here.
I think so.
Feeling. So for everyone that's watching, thank you so much for being here. I truly hope that you have found this conversation to be beautiful and inspiring and uplifting, and to help you, whatever it is that you're dealing with in your life right now. As the old saying is, these things too shall pass, and they do, when you find the gift that's in all of them. Because there is a gift in everything, no matter how painful it seems to be when we're experiencing it.
Absolutely.
As always, remember to hold your light so high others can't help but see their own light. Together, we are creating a world of peace, love, harmony, prosperity, and freedom for all life on earth. And as always, get bold, be fearless, and live free.
Amen.
I have to find my outro.